So you're still working with Propelics.
Yeah, which is now Anexinet. They were bought.
Anexinet, okay.
Yeah,
That's
and it sounds like we do a lot of what you guys are doing.
confused by the future of technology.
Exactly.
That's what I'm doing.
All right.
Good
so
start, right?
We're in the Intrepid Cafe, where you suggested we meet.
That's right.
You're working for Intrepid,
Yes.
but you're living in Denmark.
That's right. That's right.
So, folks, this is my good friend Jim Forrest. We worked together at PayPal. Not even for that long.
Nope. Like 4 months, maybe?
Yeah. But we had a lot in common, and we had a great connection, and we've kept in touch, and we've seen each other off and on. And then you moved away.
Yeah, well, what happened is the day Intrepid got bought, Juliet got a job offer at the University of Copenhagen, and we said, I think it's a sign. We should probably move.
Yeah.
So we did.
And then you were able to keep working remotely, or?
Yeah. Because Accenture bought us. Accenture's worldwide.
Yeah.
And ultimately, just as long as you're chargeable, you are employable anywhere in the world, which is one of the perks of I would say, a big corporate acquisition.
Yeah.
Where I don't think we would have ever been able to do it at Intrepid if we were just Intrepid solo. So, kind of exciting. Yeah.
Welcome to Device Squad, everybody, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propelics, an Anexinet company. Today I'm interviewing my friend Jim Forrest, Director of Creative Innovation at Intrepid, an Accenture studio. Jim just recently moved to Copenhagen with his family, so I thought it'd be great to hear about what life is like in technology over there, as well as to hear more about this crazy idea James has for shutting off the internet. Also, James happens to be a fantastic musician, and you'll be hearing some of his music throughout the episode, so enjoy. Device Squad, fighting crimes against enterprise mobility worldwide. Bad UI, frustrating user experiences, poorly conceived mobile strategies, we defeat them all. This podcast series will cover all aspects of enterprise mobility, including strategy, development, design, testing, and more. My name is Steve Brickman. I'm a mobile strategist and UX architect with Propelics. First, a brief history of the company. Founded in 2011, Propelics is a mobile strategy consultancy helping enterprises worldwide devise true mobile strategies and develop world-class mobile applications across all industry verticals. Propelics clients include large companies like Amway, Bright Horizons, Bank of Montreal, Dubai Airports, Family Dollar, DLL, Cintas, Merck, and many more. Propelics' menu of services includes mobile kickstarts, covering everything from mobile strategy and road mapping to MCOE to UI UX design to mobile testing strategy, along with soup to nuts app design development and support. Additionally, Propelics offers 3 homegrown enterprise mobile products. My wife was like, oh my God, find out about Denmark. She's like ready to leave.
Yeah. Leave. Immediately. It's so good. Yeah.
Really.
If you could find a gig there, I would advise anyone to go there. But if Americans could figure out a visa situation, then it would be a great place to go.
Yeah.
To me, I have a young family, 2 kids who are just turned 2 in June, and it's just very family oriented, and people get it.
Yeah.
Everything's set up for kids.
Family oriented here. You don't think?
I think that
What do we get, like 3 days of child leave
right.
on average?
I think we think it's, especially like Cambridge, like the more progressive, Somerville, like, the nice greater Boston areas, we think, oh, we're set up for kids, but we're always throwing them in cars. The structures of how we care for children don't provide good lunch options. It's like, hey, parents, bring all the supplies, make sure the kids have a lunch. And I hear all these news reports about, hey, there's all these starving kids, etc. And it's like in Denmark, chefs are just part of organizations. If you worked at an Intrepid, there'd be a chef here. If you go to a daycare, there's a chef there. And it's just these types of things that just make, these small little things that make your life a lot nicer. They start to add up in big ways in Denmark. I would say any of the Nordic countries, which starts to make, the time that you're spending with your kids just much more valuable and more focused.
Yeah.
And plus, people work hard. I think there's a misconception of, in Denmark, people just, it's European lifestyle. They leave at 4 and you don't see them ever again. They do work in a different way than Americans. They're much more focused, I would say. There's just much less of that kind of small talk culture in the workplace that I see. But, they work around these kind of specific moments in the year, kind of rally. Like leading up to Easter was the most I've ever worked in my life. It was really intense. But then, people downshift, and no one ever would give you a funny look at 3:30 or 4 o'clock if you said, I'm going to pick up my kids. Like literally people would reschedule meetings and say, of course. And I just feel like those sorts of things, they go a long way.
Yeah. So what's your new title? You're a
Creative Innovation Director. Yep. We have multiple titles. Accenture gives you a title. I still kind of hold my Intrepid title, which is really, it's a studio lead. It's trying to kind of set the North Star for projects and also the studio. Me and Matt Bridges, who we kind of share the same passion at Intrepid of just trying to figure out where should we be going, right? Because we're noticing a bit of a downtick with mobile, that kind of excitement that Intrepid and all of us who were doing mobile in, say, 2014, it's definitely not the same now. I think that ambition that we had just 4 years ago has to me turned into more about the behaviors and how we're using these things, which is why we started connecting, about this shutting off the web, or like what's going on with the technology that we're making. So that's the kind of things I'm thinking about, plus leading projects.
Are you mostly leading at this point? Are you mostly managing, or are you still doing a lot?
Because I'm remote, I don't manage people. I don't have a direct report. I mentor a lot of people generally. It's like setting the direction and then making sure the proper resources are in place to kind of fulfill the vision, and when it's right, move off.
Is it mostly mobile that you're doing?
No, it's everything. We used to just be so mobile focused, and we would do a web tool if we had to kind of build out a back end. But no, everything at this point, you name it. From branding to IoT to, good old web B2B. Yeah.
How are the kids doing? Like, you look great. You look
Thanks.
Like you haven't aged. What? It's been like, PayPal was what, like?
It was probably 8 years, no,
8 years
7
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
I lose track. Things are good, thank you. I lost weight since moving to Denmark because I bike and I walk so much, and the portion sizes are much smaller.
Yeah.
So it just feels like, without even thinking about it, I literally lost 17 pounds moving to Denmark and having 2 kids, lugging them around,
Yeah.
The kids are great. They're prospering. They speak English and Danish, and their third language is French, which they're slower to kind of get, but their mom is half French. So that's good. Yeah, they're a ball of joy, really.
They're good. They're okay.
They're good kids. They're good kids. They wake us up too early.
Yeah.
I never sleep past about 6:30.
Yeah. That's where the aging usually happens.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
lack of sleep.
Yeah.
But you're still really young. I think you're a lot younger than I am.
41.
Yeah. So I'll be 50 in like a month.
Okay. All right.
So I'm really starting to feel it now.
Yeah.
It's not
Oh, I feel it now, so I can't imagine. I don't think it goes uphill from here, but maybe.
It's like a precipice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think after 40, it accelerates the rate of like bodily disintegration. It's kind of like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, that's something to look forward to.
It's definitely. Maybe they've come up with a remedy for it over there in Denmark. Over here, they don't seem to care.
People do look a lot healthier there, and it's funny because like
I'm sure they do.
growing up as a New Englander, I always thought that like people looked a bit weathered in New England, and I couldn't quite figure out like what was it. And Juliet and I always joke about like how the region and the climate and the culture you live changes your facial expressions.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I always see New Englanders at airports coming, from someplace warm or whatnot, coming back to New England, and they always look completely out of place to me. And I'm like, do I look like that too? Where it's like we just put our face outside the door, and there's a cold wind coming. It's like that face.
Yeah.
It's that face.
Yeah, we're always mad about
Yeah.
something.
And
There's
that-
something that we're not happy with.
Yeah.
We need to criticize. So
That's
we're
right.
doing it
Yeah.
internally until we can actually say
Exactly.
it out loud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the physical thing is real in New England for sure, but the wit is also something that is like priceless, and
Yeah.
like there's a trade-off. I don't think any.
People are too happy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the problem.
yeah.
They're not gonna-
Yeah, there's nothing to joke about.
jokes
really.
jokes don't happen in
No, it's
a happy environment. You
They
gotta be
definitely do, but not the level of sarcasm is
Right.
nowhere matches Boston in my opinion, but maybe because I'm a local.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from here, but I've never felt like my whole life I've never felt firmly committed to a place.
Did you grow up in Boston?
Yeah, I originally grew up in Malden.
Yeah.
Moved around. When I left for Copenhagen. I was in Somerville.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's different when like my wife is from London, so she wasn't stuck
Yeah.
thinking I'm going to be in Boston or anywhere,
Yeah.
which makes it a little bit easier. Much harder for me, but you kind of need it to live. Like I talked to my neighbor who used to live downstairs from us in Copenhagen about how not to become stagnant, right? And like how challenging yourself with kind of big physical changes that you're just kind of forced to
Like
have to
having twins.
rethink things. Yeah, having twins, moving, it's like nothing felt comfortable, which I think it gives you that perspective of your brain is open and active to all this newness, right? And it gives you a charge. It gives you a new vantage point, which is so good. I can always tell when I'm not inspired. For me, my photo history tells me if I'm inspired or not.
Yeah.
Like if I haven't taken a photo in 5 days, that's usually a sign like I'm not feeling great about a place. Yeah. And that's always been an indicator for me.
Have you listened to Wolfpack?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm like obsessed.
Yeah. I've been trying like dark metal actually because
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Scandinavia and it just
Yeah,
seems
it's
appropriate.
big over there.
Yeah.
Did you bring all your equipment?
Yeah.
You must have.
Yeah.
Is everything so?
Everything's over there.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's great.
I packed like I'm never coming home again.
Yeah. All right, so let's just go over your background a little bit. You were at Berkeley
Yep.
for a while.
Yep.
What were you doing there? Like,
I was the creative director of their online school.
Ah.
So Berkeley has a problem of most of their students weren't finishing their degrees because they were going out on the road.
Yeah.
So they decided, hey, let's try to get our degree programs online, get the kind of instructor model set up there and sell courses that way. So yeah, I was working on that side of Berkeley, which was a lot of fun. Met some of the most interesting, influential people in 6 months that I've ever met. It was one of those like a lot happened in a very short time. It was like a massive growth. It was actually what got me out of museums, right? I was too worried to leave museums because I worked there for 11 years. And I had the gig that everyone would have died for, which was the kind of creative technologist, creative director role, which you just did everything. You coded, you designed, you did exhibits. But it started to get a little old, and I started to realize I'm kind of a technology person working in a nonprofit where it's like everything was off. Like, people didn't know how to manage me. Salaries were off. It was just like, am I going to do this for life? And just kind of changed it up, right?
and then you went you didn't go right to PEMS. PEMS was recent, right?
Well, PEM was my first gig. So that was like 11 years from college to, to my 30s, really.
Wow. That's the Peabody Essex Museum.
Yeah.
Which, for people who might be local, is a fantastic museum in Salem.
Yeah, for sure.
Really awesome.
A special place.
Yeah,
definitely. So I went to a recruiter, which I never had done before, and said, find me a startup that will allow me to work 2 to 3 days a week on site, and here's what I want to get paid. And it was almost like 3 things that should have never worked together. And the recruiter said, I'll try, but it's highly unlikely. Literally the day after, called back and said, Zio is really interested in hiring you. They're a cool sleep startup out in Newton. Okay. And that's where I met Ben Rubin and Derek Haswell, who I went off to do another startup, Change Collective, with. But that gave me the startup bug, and got really interested in that whole process and that dynamic, which, working at CO, working at Change Collective, then working at Custom Made, which is right in East Cambridge, used to be in East Cambridge. That's where I think everything changed, because I was mentored by Google Ventures. So I had Jake Knapp and Mike Margolis and Braden Korowitz to kind of at my disposal. All of us did. But I just kind of took advantage of it more than most of them, and had Jake Knapp sort of one-on-ones for 7 months, and Mike Margolis. So I just learned the whole design sprint, design thinking process from those guys, and the whole user, how to do proper user testing in the modern era from Mike Margolis, and that I think is one of the tipping points of my life, right? Like, it was that experience that then kind of set a new direction for me. And after a lot of courting with Intrepid, and Mark Kasdorf, the CEO, finally decided to join Intrepid because they were a really amazing development shop, right? Like, they were the best developers I had ever met in my life. And we worked at PayPal, we had some really good developers there. But no one touched Intrepid. They were so good, so inventive, just so proficient. It was like the dream when you bring a design that you think is pretty awesome, and then the developers come back to you and give you something that's literally 250% better, and you go, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
And I had never witnessed something like that.
Yeah.
So it was just, after that happened, it was like, okay, I'll join Intrepid to build their design team.
That's awesome. So tell me about this idea you had. The idea is shutting off the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, what does that mean?
Yeah. We've gone into an extreme mode of internet use, right? Where on one side we have the kind of the stacks, we have the Googles, the Facebooks, the Microsofts. Everyone's trying to siphon us into their pod, right? And everything that we're doing within them is giving them data. There's all this it's like this self-feeding mechanism where we're just being monitored all the time. We're obsessed with everything that we're doing. None of these companies want us to kind of unhook at all. There's no value in that for them. VCs don't want to see any of that.
Right. And they just keep coming up with more strategies to keep us engaged.
Right. So they hire people like you and I to do the most, clever things to keep people's eyeballs attached, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I think that there's a lot of great things that those services are offering, right, that are undeniable. And then on the flip side, there's regime. There's the China. There's the state-controlled usage of the information.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a growing movement of people that are on neither pole. They don't want to be on the kind of extreme stack. They don't want to be in the regime. They want to be somewhere in the middle. And there's a more holistic way of using digital tools. And I don't know where you stand with this, but I feel like we're kindred spirits, and you probably have this conversation at home with kids. That, if we keep going too far in one direction, it's almost like we're gonna lose a part of ourselves, and we're not gonna be able to get it back. And
It's a constant struggle with our kids to get them away from the screens and convince them that the real world is worth looking at. I mean, it's less interesting. Like, what do you do? Like, it's just less interesting. So I totally hear you on that.
And I think that, like, we may be the test dummies, but can we actually reverse this, and can we safeguard people? I mean, I think maybe because I have young girls, and they're very young, and I can already see that, like, screens are just very appealing, and you see it at a very young age, that you start to wonder about what should we be doing about this, right? So I'm starting to see interesting things like parental or family manifestos, where it's like each house has a sort of a rule, a doctrine, right? But it's not shared. So just like when you were a kid and maybe your parents didn't give you Coke, but then you went to your best friend's house and they had sugar everywhere, you're still exposed to some pretty bad habits. And maybe your house is the sanctuary, but there's no ubiquitous change. And I think that's cool, and I think that's like what responsible people do these days. But I think that we need a little bit more of an intervention, right? And I use this example of B&H Photo in New York. So, run by Orthodox Jews. And they don't take orders from Sabbath, Sabbath down to, up. And they did this in an era where I think all of us, including myself, were like, no, like, keep the internet on, like, let me order things. That's what this thing's for, right? And they literally refused. They said, nope, that's like, you don't need it. You don't need a lens that bad. And looking back at that in hindsight, I actually think it's one of the most forward-thinking practices. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think the internet needs to be shut off. I think it's a bold title, but I think that we need to start thinking about what are healthy behaviors, right? And when I moved to Denmark, I realized I couldn't buy things like I could in America. When I'm here, I can guarantee that if I, on a whim, need to get something for my house, Home Depot's open till 10, right? Or whatever, maybe even 24 hours in some places. I never have to think about it. I can just consume it. It creates some pretty interesting patterns that aren't quite healthy for a lot of people. And when I moved to Denmark, it was like, for one, I couldn't even find the things that I needed because I just didn't even understand what shops sold them. And once I did understand what shops sold them, they were open in such kind of limited capacity compared to what we were used to in the US that I just wasn't consuming, And some may say, well, that's bad for the economy, etc. But the whole economy is based on that. So it is equalized, right?
Right.
And other people aren't taking advantage of the fact that their competitor is closed at 4, so they'll stay open till 7, where in the US we would do that. And it just started making me think about this fact of, like, why doesn't the internet share some similar principles, right? Where, like, Amazon, for example, does anyone need to order anything at 3 in the morning, right, at your local time zone? And some people may say, yes, well, I work the night shift, or, whatever, I'm up at that time. Okay, there's exceptions to this. But I think, Juliet has a funny example of ordering, I think, 3 anal thermometers accidentally at like 3 in the morning during early motherhood for our children. And it's just like, you didn't need to do that, right? Like, this wasn't a necessary thing. And what is it leading to? And I think, like, I can joke about consumerism being like, well, that's one negative effect. But I think about cyberbullying. I just think about some of the things people say to each other at 2 in the morning that wouldn't be said at 8 in the morning. And have we just gone too far with certain services where we're just kind of allowing just too much accessibility, where certain things like a Wikipedia never shut down. That's like what we built the internet for, right? Like, that was like this knowledge exchange. But when we start to feel that there's something that could have a negative effect on society that we're already seeing, we should start thinking about who monitors these things.
I just learned about this doxing. Do you know about doxing? I didn't even know what this word was, but doxing is like this practice where somebody will go into your personal history. They'll like scour the internet for like articles you wrote or things you tweeted and so forth, and then they'll compile like a laundry list of ammunition to use against you.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's political,
Okay.
or they're trying to get you, if you're running for some kind of local office or something, they'll then have this like horrible, it's terrible.
Right. You can't stop people from being malicious, right?
Yeah.
You can't stop bad intentions, but you can. It's almost like one of these things where we've let the internet grow wild, right? It's like it's a wild flower field, and we haven't trimmed anything,
Right.
and we should maybe start thinking about trimming it a bit, right? It's just we know enough about it now. It's not in the infancy that it was when we started, that it was just cool. It was just we were like loading it up. The internet didn't have anything, and we were giving it its trees. Now it's pretty grown, and we know what things are good. We know what things are bad.
Yeah.
Like, let's start thinking about this.
It contains all knowledge.
It's everything that you can get in sort of like inspired by and in trouble with, it has. And I think that it's funny, like in the US I never thought about regulation in the way that I do in Denmark, because Denmark is like, they're rule followers. They like rules. And because they like rules and they follow rules, society's orderly. And you don't get the kind of dynamics that you get in the US, which for good or bad. But it just makes me think about the fact of like the American dynamism that just has just such equality gaps, etc. If that's applied to the internet, that's just going to result in the same negative that's resulted in the physical, right? So I guess I'm getting inspired a little bit by the Scandinavian model of restraint and focus and how that applies to digital.
It's really interesting. I just got a contract with Ars Technica.
Yeah, nice.
That's a good place. So we could co-author something.
Yeah,
of like
I've
that.
I've written 3/4 of it, but I was actually waiting for this new iOS update, because there's another side to this for me, because I'm a technologist, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think like I talked to people at the tech festival in Copenhagen, which was one of the most inspiring moments I've had in years in a tech group, talking about the slow web. And we had people from the Danish government, we had people from the UN there, we had people from like the government agencies that control all the communications throughout the country, just talking about how governance plays a role in this, and like whose responsibility is it to help with this stuff? Because like I was saying before, there's the Chinese kind of model of the regime, and like I think Americans would never go for this type of like Trump's going to control the internet button.
Right. They don't even want to get texted.
Yeah.
By Trump.
Yeah. It's like we don't want that.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, does everyone have the personal, like the family manifesto style? Does everyone have the literacy to do this and know that it's bad? And I actually don't think that they do. I think people like us who've worked in it for years, we're very aware.
Yeah.
But how many other parents who aren't working tech jobs or just surviving?
Absolutely.
Are they thinking about the iPad and its effect?
They're probably grateful that they have the distraction.
Absolutely.
To give their kid an iPad. You see people in. The thing that bothers me really is like when you see a really young kid, like you'll see like a 4-year-old kid in a restaurant with a phone or something, because the parents don't think that the kid can sit for 10 minutes until his food arrives.
Right.
I mean, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. So I think that, technology being in a company that does a lot of apps, thinking about how do we control this, even like us as people who understand tech, right? Like if there's anyone who should be able to change the habits of my technology use, it's me. Like I develop the stuff, right? So I started asking developers at Intrepid. I wanted to design kind of a notification manager app. It's like I was just like, I like what Slack does with Do Not Disturb. It's interesting that I can pretty much say either snooze notifications or don't contact me at this time. And Slack, with their first implementation of that, was like very bold and very smart. Now, the problem is that Slack's kind of went backwards on it, and they allow me to not be contacted, but then if you want to contact me, you can just hit one extra button and you can contact me, right? Which was a little bit like you just undid the good thing.
Right.
But it does make people deliberately say, do I really want to bother Steve right now?
Yeah.
Which is good. The problem is, though, is that if you don't have app-specific notification settings, and I'm not talking about on or off, and I'm not talking about, a sort of like just hide them in my, today view or my, behind one wall. I'm talking about like I only want to receive news updates between 8 and 10. That's it. I don't want to know what Trump's up to at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, I want banking updates all the time just in case something happened. Like I think that level of granularity is something we need, or else like we're going down this kind of other dark path. Because I also, from a developer standpoint, I just think just turning off notifications when you have people who actually know what they're doing and can be giving you some interesting content that you actually want, and your only option is to kind of either silence them and get them in the like your dirty closet, or just they're off. It's like you're kind of doing a disservice to what we can actually do within technology as well. So it's like until we can actually get that level of control, we're actually allowing tech companies to distract us, deliberately.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You and I have been on the same mental path, because I had this idea maybe like a year ago or so that I was shocked that Apple had not implemented in the parental controls the granularity that's required.
Right.
Like I should be able to go into every app in my settings and say, okay, I want this app to be available to my kid from these hours.
Yep.
Yep. And that would be so easy for them to do.
Oh yeah. It's not a technology barrier.
Hide the app. Just hide the app between these hours. Yeah.
But I think that's the issue, right? Is that if we think that this all has to fall on you and your parenting and your manifesto in your house that you hang up on the door, that's a problem, because we should be leaning into these companies to say, you know what, it's just not about monthly active users for you guys. Why don't we create some healthier metrics for VCs to invest in and for boards to kind of report on, where, healthy users is a metric that actually makes your valuation go up. It's like the paradigm's wrong. And this isn't something I feel like, I'm a revolutionary spirit, I'm the only one thinking this. There's a lot of us thinking this, but we need to start pressing a little harder. Because it's like we know it can be done, we know the impacts, and the other side of it is that we just kind of get so sick of it that we give up on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's tiresome. It's really arduous to stay on your kids and yourself and restrict your own use. I'm as guilty of it as anybody,
Yeah, we all are. Because it's actually that good.
Yeah, it's that good, exactly. Like I'll wake up and the first thing I reach for is my phone in the morning, and my wife will yell at me if she sees me do it.
Well, luckily you have your wife, right? Because future generations, if they're both kind of in that same zone,
Yeah. And from a marketing standpoint, I feel like it would be so easy to create campaigns around healthy usage, and then create users. So create create different, not just so that the average parent, say, doesn't have to go in and do the granularity and set every app, but they could just say, okay, I want to be this kind of I want my kid to be this kind of a user. There's a template. So it's just a switch, and then it shuts everything off between certain hours or whatever, and they don't have to do it themselves, and they can raise it or reduce it, with a couple of sliders or whatever.
Exactly. Love that idea.
It's all so doable.
Yeah. No, I know, and I think that it's because funding and valuations and all these things, they're seeking obviously addicted users as a metric.
Yeah.
That means that these things are valuable, and okay, that's fine, that's true. We can't deny that, but what if we could challenge it a bit and say, you know what, come up with some craftier ways of doing things, but it's also societal, right? I think that there's other things, like forget even tech companies being a part of this, is like, why can't we start to teach kids that, email is meant for checking at 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock. It's not meant for pull, refresh, always, notification, let's just react to things. And I think that distribution channels need to be thought about a little bit more effectively, where, at Change Collective, we thought a lot about, like, what's a digital tap on the shoulder, and if there's an emergency, what's actually your communication vehicle? And we always said, like, cell phone, call on the phone, right? Don't send an email. It's like, and how many people are spending the time saying, this specific medium, this is what it's used for, and this is how you use it.
And watch literally just tapped me.
Exactly.
Right, almost exactly when you said tap on the shoulder.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I have that power. But it's one of these things where I think that there's a few roles that are evolving that I feel like we're starting to hear about. We listen to podcasts about these kind of behavioral evangelists, or just about digital well-being, and it's like, when are we going to start to get to a spot where, just like teaching sex ed in school, there's a similar teacher who's respected, and probably not like your sex ed teacher, because that was always funny, at least in Puritan New England. But it's like, who's actually teaching you how to use things, and that there's everyone has a shared understanding of it, so people don't go outside the norm on that.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
You know what I mean?
Actually offer a class.
Yeah.
In schools.
Exactly.
For healthy usage.
Right.
Yeah.
And that everyone understands, like,
it's a great idea.
we don't do this. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a cultural taboo, and like, we don't. I think we're starting to get them. Things like friends at True Motion in Boston, who are all about reducing distracted driving. I think that there are good companies out there. There are a lot of people trying to think about these things, but it's a lot of islands.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that there's 3 tiers to it. There's government, there's private business, and then there's us, our homes, our families. And you can't just say one of them has to be in charge of this. We can't say it's Facebook's responsibility to change everything. I think there may have to be possibly some government intervention. And it's funny because, like, my article, at least in my head, is called "Internet, Go the Fuck to Sleep," based on the children's books.
Yeah.
And when I started thinking about this concept and talking to people about it, I think that there was this connotation of, like, the kill switch, the internet kill switch, which is the thing, right? Like, where you just shut off all internet protocol. That's not at all what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm for technology. I'm just for good use of it. And people taking responsibility for it where it's appropriate. And I think that that's just the biggest thing. And how are we doing it? And how is it localized? It's going to be different in your community versus mine. And that's okay.
You just made me think that I wonder if like AI and neural networks, machine learning, could be used almost as like a monitor of social media.
Yeah.
To sort of help prevent or lessen any kind of bullying where it would go, and we keep looking for that kind of language.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that could be done.
I think so.
looks at the relationships between the people being discussed and sort of analyzes
Absolutely.
that and then makes a decision. I don't know.
I think that'd
Maybe
be
there's
a
something
great
there.
use.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's it in a nutshell, really.
That's it. All right, so
Simple.
let's start working on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, so yeah, what do you do, right? What is
Yeah.
the next, how do you
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah.
If you're a consultant, how do you take this approach with your clients? If you're
Yeah.
a parent, if you're a lawmaker, like, what is the
Right.
next step on this?
Yeah. I don't know.
You know?
Maybe a letter to Apple. I don't know. I mean, I had this idea that Apple should actually come out with a whole new phone for parents to give their kids, because this is the quandary that we're in now. We want to give our daughter a phone. She's 11.
Yep.
Because we want her to be able to contact us, we want to know where she is and stuff, but we don't want her to get hung up on games and stuff. So I was thinking, like, why don't they just build a phone that just has, like, email, chat,
Right.
talk, text, GPS, music, streaming,
Yeah.
of course, and then and a camera, and that's it. Like, no browser,
Yeah.
no social media.
Right.
Like, you can't get to it. Would probably be a decent solution, I think. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I would buy that. For
there's
no one.
there's a lot of people that I'm meeting in Europe who are going back to Nokias.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I'm too interested in like what current tech offers just to reduce too much of it, right? Like I think that I'm not against social media. I'm not against people taking photographs and posting. I think it's like a vital part of our new skin as tech humans, right? But it's just about, like, to me, it's about when and how and the behavior in it. So I think it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like, I feel like what America does wrong is like it's pretty obvious in like how we treat alcohol and nudity and all of it, right? Where it's like we're all about cover it up, restrict it, go to war, but you can't drink, which just makes everyone want to drink, right? Don't have sex, makes everyone have sex. Like, Europe doesn't have that approach, right? And people don't grow up with this kind of unhealthy desire to do a thing. So it's like, I don't want to think that like extreme restriction is the right thing, because it just makes people want to do things more,
Yeah, I
right?
hear you. Yeah.
And it's a tough thing because I understand why we think the restriction is a good thing,
Yeah.
but it's like it's kind of saying we're too weak,
Yeah. That's a good point.
you know, and we
Yeah.
should be strong enough to say, all right, I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And I actually
Right.
think a lot of younger technology users are kind of one-upping us on this. Like, I actually debate you and I being way more addicted than a lot of younger users who just, they kind of are getting it. They're not on social media like we think they are. And,
Right.
you know, they're not these addicted, crazy, you know, just tech zombies.
Yeah, but some of these social platforms are so addictive,
Yeah.
like
Snapchat.
Snapchat.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And then it's like every iteration they've got like a new thing to like
Yeah.
new point system
Exactly.
or something.
The streaks.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, ugh. So at the same time, you know, I want to trust my daughter, my son to monitor themselves. They're like battling this, you know, conglomerate of
Exactly.
people like us who
Which
know
are
how
so
to
good
decide.
at it.
Yeah.
Which are better at manipulating than
Right.
they are at resisting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're kids. They don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
They just want cookies.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's what we have to start debating, right? Is like what's the end goal for some of these companies and services, and if they don't meet the needs of our communities or our values, etc., then we have to ditch them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's hard. That's hard to know because it's so personal. I think one community versus another, one household versus another is going to be different, and restricting people from participating is another, you know, issue.
It's in a form of elitism.
Yeah.
And
So it's a tough balance, right? But I think
really tough.
But I think a simple off switch for Snapchat would be a pretty good start.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That granular app level control. Apple TV is just as bad. I was shocked to see that you can't control like what apps your kid can get to. You either have to like password protect everything on the Apple TV, which sucks, or nothing. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the video, like the Netflixes, the YouTubes of the world, all of it. Like, what was autoplay in Netflix back in the day was like 20 seconds, or you even had to select it to play the next thing. At this point, what's it, 3 seconds?
It just keeps going.
I mean, it's almost impossible not to have another one start.
Yeah.
If I show a YouTube video to my girls, they see 5 suggestions down below before the video even starts, which just makes them want more. And I've seen
They already want them.
And I've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you know what? I hate this behavior.
Yeah.
Like, this is designed, and I hate it.
Yeah.
And I see such a negative impact already of wanting more, this kind of FOMO thing. Yeah.
Well, good luck to all of us. So,
Well, at least if
that's how every episode ends, by the way.
If you move to Denmark, at least the stores will be closed so you can go home to your family without having an Amazon package arrive at your doorstep every day.
Right.
There is hope. There is hope.
Yeah.
I think Apple's new release, at least seeing some data, the screen time release, any little bit like that a company is going to start doing is going to be good.
Yeah.
But we should hold them accountable to that. If they have a release that doesn't do that, we should be
if they like regress, you mean? If they like,
or I mean, I feel like Apple is trying, like with distracted driving and the screen time, like they're doing what they can within the boundaries that they want to play with.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest for them, right?
To say, hey, we're doing something, but that should be a continuous thing. It shouldn't be. We should see in the next release something even bigger or additive that's as great. But I haven't really seen much. This is a kind of a big release for that, which is exciting. Yeah. But it's still kind of like, from what we know they can do. Yeah. To what they did. It's okay.
Great. Well, Jim, thanks for doing this. All right, I know you just got married.
I just got married on Saturday. I know.
That's crazy. Why are you here? Why are you working? Aren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon?
I feel like just returning back to Copenhagen will be our honeymoon. Be peaceful. Yeah.
Are you guys going anywhere?
Not necessarily at the moment. Yeah. With 2 kids and
I know it's a different thing. Well, you guys have been together for.
Yeah, we've been together for 7 years. So.
So you might have already been common law married. I don't know.
I
don't know exactly.
I would think so. Yeah, it's not saying that we shouldn't go on a honeymoon, but I don't know how we would do it, to be honest. Plus, we don't like leaving our kids for too long. We were away from them for a day, and it just felt like, oh, this hurts.
Yeah. My parents refused to take our kids overnight.
Yeah.
They're like, we're done. They're like in Lexington. We're like 4 miles away. They're like, no. Just why don't you just hang on? Our kids are crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Steve. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propelics and Anexinet company.